This is not a sermon. In fact, that will be a cold day in hell. All right. I took a Rhodes Scholar, which used to be called Elder Hostel tour, May 12th to May 19th. It was transformative. It was amazing. Alabama and Georgia. So with the help of my great friend Bob Spofford, I'm going to see what I mean? Okay, now I'm going to give, the pointer is someplace. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you kind of barely see it there. But off to the right, right here, is Atlanta. We landed in Atlanta Airport, which is unbelievable. It's so busy. We did a lot of Atlanta, came down to Montgomery, went out to Selma, and then came back to Birmingham and back to Atlanta. And it was just wonderful. What I'm going to talk about is Atlanta, first of all, and what we saw there, then Montgomery, and particularly the Equal Justice Initiative, which is Brian Stevenson, and you had Just Mercy, which was very good, but what you see down here is the fruits of his labor. Just a tremendous job, just so moving and so new. Rosa Parks in Montgomery bus boycott, and then we went out to the Selma and the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and we walked the bridge. We then went to Birmingham and saw it, conclusion, and here I am at Atlanta. That is where Martin Luther King is buried, and that is me and Gandhi, and projecting peace. Here is the tomb of Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. It is surrounded by water, and there's a flowing of water coming down, and I believe his speeches did refer to water many times. Extremely moving. The Nobel Prize is there. Wonderful thing to see. This is a conglomeration of pictures. On the left is the Ebenezer Baptist Church where King spoke. And one of our group, who was really smart, got up in the morning and nobody else knew, and she went to church there. And she saw Warnock, isn't that the senator from Georgia? He spoke. The place was jammed. I wish I'd been there. In the middle is a very interesting story. You can barely probably see that, but that is the picture of Matt Herron, who lived about 3 blocks from here. Matt Herron was a civil rights photographer. In 1963, he went down to Montgomery, and the day after the explosion in Birmingham that killed the 4 girls, he was there taking pictures. He was chased because the photographers were jailed. So he went off and he was chased all over and he got away. I have spoken to Matt. My Rotary Club had him in. A great guy. He just passed away about a year ago. And he had incredible stories. The situation in '63 down there was pitiful. Over on the right is a Dr. Larry H. Spruill of Morehouse College, and he was talking about the media and their involvement in the civil rights movement in the 60s. He was very, very good. Now, this is the Georgia State House. On the left, on the first floor, is a picture of who? Come on. Martin Luther King. And who's the picture on the right? Robert E. Lee. King's on the first floor, Lee's on the second floor in the same building. And not only that, they have a law you can't take down Confederate statues in Alabama. Or Georgia, I should say, in Georgia. Amazing to see this. Talk about a contradiction. This is the highlight. People say, what's the highlight of what you saw? The Equal Justice Initiative. This is the shirt that I got. with that group. And this is the sculpture garden. It's been open 6 weeks. It's been on CBS Sunday Morning, all through the media. It is profound. If you ever do have a chance, go down and see this. It's no photography. What you're seeing here are scenes that I got from the internet. And it's very reverential. It's very quiet. No photography. People can meditate and think. And what you see is, and this is what I came away with, is the blacks were not just out in the field working. They were brutalized. They were beaten. They were tortured. They were killed. They were lynched. It was a Holocaust, like the Nazis, except it took hundreds of years instead of 5 or 6 years. The atrocities against the blacks were just appalling. Now, here I am, a guy from the south side of Chicago, and I was raised in an all-white area. We had no blacks in schools. 1.5 miles to the north of me was 1,500,000 blacks. It was known as the Black Belt. Didn't have a single friend there. We played sports with them. And when we did, with the black schools, the cops would come and ring the area because they were afraid of a race riot. Well, if you think it's just in Alabama and Georgia, you're wrong. My friends, it was definitely in the north and certainly in Chicago. And it is a bit better, but not much. Same in the south. Okay, here's some of the images. Very, very strong. This was the entrance. Now that is a picture of me on the left, and that is a picture we could take at the entrance. These are world-renowned sculptors that are doing these sculptures, and they knock you off your feet. Here is, look at on the left. That's a tree, and there are fingers coming up next to the tree, arising from the ground. And the Alabama River is in the background, and that's where they brought the slave ships. They brought them up and they unloaded the slaves and they auctioned them right there. And on the right, if you can see it, that's a horse. And there's a black man leaning off to the side who is either dead or injured. Okay, this is the Equal Justice Museum. And again, profound, about 4 years old, the whole history of the blacks coming to the United States. The sailing ships that had them aboard and all the death that occurred. But there's a lot more, and right there, that's Brian Stevenson on the left. And on the right, look like mason jar bottles. They contain soil. They are soil from lynching sites. People went out to the lynching sites, ascertained it, and got soil and put it in the bottle. This is what I mean. How often did we hear in history about lynchings? Yeah, a little bit. This is all about lynchings. 4,000 bottles up there with the name of the person, the place they were lynched, and the date. More to that. This is a great experience. Get all choked up. Reverend Elizabeth O'Neill was a person that I got in contact with through Janie Spar, who spoke at Mary's service. And Elizabeth is the pastor in Montgomery of Emmanuel Presbyterian Church. She started there in 2001. In the first year, she got 1,000 pieces of hate mail and told her, get the hell out of town. What happened was that the mayor had decided he was going to celebrate the centennial of Montgomery, and they were going to have crosses put on the lawns of all the Christian church. Well, now I want you to imagine what that is. Crosses on the lawn that were burning. She objected. And she wrote a letter to the mayor saying that she objected to that. And the mayor gave that to the newspaper. Newspaper published that, and they wanted to run her out of town. She was blackballed. No male pastor, no female pastors, no male pastor would talk to her. That was 2000, 2001. So she gave a speech on the Georgia Capitol steps, and 10 people came. Last year, she gave a speech, and 1,500 people came. And they were in this huge building, and so she's grown. She just joined as members in her church 10 gay people. When she started 24 years ago, there was no association between the Christian churches and the Muslim and the Jewish and Hindu and whatever. She does that. She did that. The courage. You think it's changed a little bit, a little bit. It's a tiny blue spot in an area that is very still red. Now, they'll integrate, but they don't associate. That's the message I got. She is a great inspiration. This is the National Memorial to Peace and Justice. And the funny thing is, thank God Bob saved me on this, I mistitled that. I said the memorial to lynching. Well, it is a memorial to lynching sites. And in there, you will see in the background this. These are slabs about the size of a coffin. And that is the name of a person or persons who were lynched. Their name, their place, the date. This is what came across, slavery and all this stuff. No. After the Civil War, for entertainment, or for whatever reason, and let's talk about the reasons, there they are. If you can't read that, a black man was lynched in Millburg, Ohio, in 1892, after the Civil War, for standing around in a white neighborhood. That was the reason. And over here, Warren Powell, 14, was lynched in East Point, Georgia, in 1889 for frightening a white girl. You remember Emmett Till? Okay. This was just, and you think it's only there. They lynched him in San Rafael. They brought prisoners out in the 1870s to the old courthouse, which had a shaft at 4th and A, and they executed him. Hanged him, and you know what happened? They did it on a Sunday afternoon, and people brought their lunch and their kids. That's been proven. So we go on to studying Rosa Parks, who's the citadel, the queen, the person that stood up. She was the first one to be arrested, but not the first one to refuse to give up her seat. More on that later. That gave rise to the Montgomery bus boycott, which was fantastic. The organization of that was impeccable. They shut down the bus system, raised so much hell that what happened then was that a federal judge made a ruling that people would be integrated on the buses. That went to the Supreme Court, that was affirmed, and there was integration on the buses. Big step. Big step. So this is a tour, of course. So we're having dinner, and this lady comes out, and that's Rosa Parks. And it was indeed a presentation by an actress as Rosa Parks. So at the end of this terrific job, they said, "Do you recognize this lady?" I was the only one that did. She was one of our tour guides that day, and she dressed up. She was really cute. Did a really nice job with it. We went to Selma. My friend Bob Canepa from Mill Valley, terrific guy, Rotarian, had been there, and this was a person he put me in touch with, Diane Harris. She was our docent, but she was also there in 1963 at Selma for the riots, the Bloody Sunday. She was 15. She was hit with a cattle prod. People were beaten, and until a federal judge made a ruling to say that this particular protest could take place, the Alabama National Guard and police stopped all proceedings and beat the heck out of people. Diane is just a wonderful person. We had a great talk. And there is the length of the march. This is the Voting Rights March, which led to the voting rights bill that Johnson signed, finally. He didn't want to do it. It went from Selma to Montgomery. And we're talking about Selma. Here I am on the right with my trek across the bridge. I did make it. And on the left is John Lewis walking with one of the initial demonstrations across the bridge. And they were beaten bloody by the cops. Now, what Diane said, there were, quote, police on horseback. They weren't police. They weren't anything. They were local guys that dressed up like police and got on the horse and then hit people. She had lots of stories like that. Here's the map, but you can see what happened. There were repeated tries. It's a little hard to read, but there were repeated tries in the Bloody Sunday where they were beaten, and finally the federal judge said they could do it, and they did. 25,000 people marched. Harry Belafonte, everybody. Here's King and his wife marching at the bridge and finally making it. This was the riots. That was Bloody Sunday. It was indeed that. A real mess. Here's those aren't police. They're local Klans guys, probably, that were dressed up like cops. But that's not police. They really don't look like they're in uniform anyway. They have their helmets. And finally it happened. And they crossed the bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Edmund Pettus was a Klansman, and he was a nasty one. And the result with that is that they refused to change the name because it goes back in history. And here I'm walking, struggling my body across the bridge, and it rained, and it was really quite moving. On to Birmingham. This is the 16th Street Baptist Church that had the explosion that killed the 4 girls that Matt Herron was at. And we had a very wonderful tour of that. And this was a painting inside. If you can see it, on the left is all Confederacy. On the right is Martin Luther King and all of his involvement. The southern states have made all kinds of efforts to change their state flag, to make it close to the Confederate flag, but not quite. And we got a lecture on that, which was really interesting. This is a memorial park of the 4 girls that were killed. And here is one of my favorite pictures. I'm wearing my shirt. And this guy was taking a picture of these ladies, African-American ladies that were at the church. And I said, why don't you get in the picture? And I'll take the picture of you. Okay. So I took the picture. And I said, can I have a picture then with these ladies? Yeah, sure. So there they are, and we're all having a great time. And they were just wonderful to me. And then last, I'm certainly within my time, but I'm going to say that this is only the beginning, folks. If you want to see more of this, like an hour and a half of more detail, I'm going to give a lecture for Ollie at Dominican University, California on July 8th at 10 a.m. If you would like to attend by Zoom, it's going to be only Zoom, send me a request and I will send you the link free. My email address is roklaw@gmail.com, and I will send you a link. You're welcome to attend free of charge. I think that's it. I'm open for questions, and have you had enough? That's a short sermon.
Yeah.